5 o'clock, or it's 1 minute after, or 5 o'clock. I don't know which one is right, but it's 5 o'clock, and I call the meeting to order. Notes here. Can we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kennedy. Councilmember McEachran.
Here.
Councilmember Negretti.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox.
Here.
Mayor Garcia.
Here. Okay, let's see. We will go into public comments, and I do see that we have a gentleman here that would like to speak. E.J. Snell? E.T. Snell. Okay, very good. Give
Thank
your
you.
name and your address, please.
E.T. Snell, Apple Valley. I'm on my way to Sacramento. That's why I didn't stay for the council meeting. So I've got to get to the Judicial Council. My name is E.T. Snell, and I'm a community activist on many fronts. I wear many hats. I'm a certified Christian drug and alcohol counselor. I held a real estate license. I'm presently in production on a cable show on political events, and I often attend the county supervisor meetings and other meetings in a clown costume to garner attention. I didn't wear that tonight because I just didn't feel it was appropriate. I usually wear it to garner attention to the issues. I'm going to speak in the skate park, and I've been working as an investigative reporter with on county politics for probably since the early 90s. And truly, it'll get you a cup of coffee and a prison trip. My website's etsnell.com. In my plight, I'm not a birthday party clown. I'm not a circus clown. I'm a political clown, and I use it to garner attention. An ounce of prevention is worth a ton of cure. And the way this country's going, I think it's pretty inevitable about the direction we're going in. But I want to highlight on children, because that's one of my favorite issues, was foster care, because I was raised in foster care. So was my father. And the same things in the San Bernardino County 8 case that were alleged are the same things that he went through. The importance of a park, wow. The foster, what we're doing to kids, and that's why I'm getting ready to go to Sacramento and speak to the Commission on the Judicial Council, because we're taking 2-year-old children and we're psychotropically medicating them in foster care. The money that the federal government gives is up to $150,000 a year. So what we're doing to our children, and how important this is to me to see the council come together and come together for the children. Only 10% of the children are physically abused and 7% are sexually abused. The rest are not abused. And they're taking children for smoking marijuana to crazy things. And if you get into what's really going on, and then to psychotropically medicate children on a judge's order, is you can't give a 2-year-old child psychotropic medication, and we're doing it for the money. And it's so sad what the society has come to and what we're doing to the children and what the courts are allowing. I realize it's out of your purview. But we can start here today, and we can start here with this bike park, and we can make Victorville the epicenter to stop child abuse and to pay attention to our children. If you look at Mr. Getsky, and I'll leave you folks the hookup, he's a lead psychiatrist. You can't give a 2-year-old child psychotropic medication. You know how we stopped the salts? They had salts going out a few years ago, and we all got together and we banned that. Well, I realize you don't have any purview over the courts, but there's a thing called common sense. And when you see this government is out of control, and it is with the children, because we're not paying attention to the children. We're really not. And that's why I salute you. That was you were coming with that skateboard park. I also launched a recall against Lovingood because of the Andrew Doobie case. Andrew Doobie was an Apple Valley child who was ripped from his family. No charges were filed at the time they took him. 2 years later, they filed charges. But the long of the story short is they're ripping families apart in CPS, and that whole thing needs to be ripped up by its poisonous roots. You can't give $150,000 and to put that on the plate when you're taking care of these children, because They only get $17 a day in foster care, but when they put them on medication, it goes up to $1,000 a day. So what I'm saying is that there's so many safety mechanisms that are not in place that should be for our children. You guys are elected officials, and it's just me and you right here, and I'm telling you, we're not taking care of our children. And these children in foster care go to school with our children. Nobody's monitoring them. We had a case, the San Bernardino County 8 was just launched. I don't know if you know about this. That case, those children were in Victorville. They were homeless for 6 months. So the school district, if we get something with the foster care and we start monitoring these kids and working with these kids and giving them skate parks and giving them what they really need so that they stand a chance in life, I would surely appreciate it. And Mr. Negretti, I'm hoping that me and you can sit down and talk. I'm looking for somebody to replace Lovingood. Although I did support Mr. Lovingood, and I don't know if anybody saw the Rick Rowley tape that where he was giving me the finger at the fairgrounds. It's on my site too. Some people said that 2,000 people saw it and he lost by 2,000 votes. It made a difference. I just come up here and do what I can do for the children. And you know what, and for the people in general and for humanity. But there's very little humanity left in our political system and in our government. And these judges, like Kamansky, he was a judge from here. He was a pedophile. He's still a judge. He's still a jurist. The federal lawsuit was filed under KAMNSKI, not KAMNSKY. You can go look at that. They're geniuses. These pedophiles are absolute geniuses, but the trouble with geniuses, they cross the line into insanity. And that's what we have here. So I'm asking you folks to come together for the children and see what else we can do with them. Can we monitor the kids in foster care? Can we give an extra helping or an extra portion for those children? Can we make a difference with psychotropically medicating the children? I know I went over my 3 minutes. And anybody wants any information on what's going down with this foster care thing, and they're all in our city, just like the San Bernardino County 8. These children were homeless in foster care. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay, we will be going into our closed session, and we need a declaration from our city attorney.
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We have 5 closed session items this evening. 2 involve existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. That case is the SEC versus the City of Victorville, and the case numbers set forth on the agenda. That's an item for both the Airport Authority and the City Council. In addition, we have 3 anticipated litigation matters pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D4. And those are anticipated litigation that involve the City Council, the Victorville Successor Agency to the Victorville Redevelopment Agency, and the Southern California Logistics Rail Authority. To the extent there's reportable action, we will report it at the conclusion of the closed session or at the commencement of the 6 o'clock regular meeting.
Thank you. We will now go into our executive session, and we will be returning at 6 p.m. It is 6 o'clock, and I call this meeting to order. May we have roll call, please?
Councilmember Kennedy? Here. Councilmember McEachron?
Here.
Councilmember Negretti?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Cox?
Here.
Mayor Garcia?
Here. May we have the closed session announcement by the city attorney, please?
Thank you, Mayor Garcia. We had 5 closed session items which are set forth on the agenda. 2 were existing litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D1. Those involved the case of the SEC versus the City of Victorville. One was for the Airport Authority, the other for the City Council. The case names and numbers are set forth specifically on the agenda. The other 3 items were anticipated litigation pursuant to Government Code 54956.9 D4. Each one involved one particular case, and they pertain to the city, the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, and to the Southern California Logistics Rail Authority. At this time, there is no reportable action with respect to any of those items.
Thank you. We will have the invocation and pledge of allegiance. Invocation will be by Pastor Curtis Green, Burning Bush Baptist Church, and the pledge will be by our Chief, Sam Lucia. And remain standing after the invocation.
Good evening. If you would bow your heads, please. Dear Lord, we come to you today, Lord God, just first thanking you for another day of this new year that we haven't seen, Lord. Another month of this new year that we haven't seen. Lord, we pray right now that the best of 2014 is going to be the worst of 2015 in everyone's life, Lord God. Lord, we thank you for this city council, Lord God, and we're instructed to pray for those in authority over us. So we pray for the electeds, Lord God, who spend the time here to handle city business, and we pray for their families also, because it is a sacrifice away from them. Have your way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Right hand over your heart. Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, we have our Chief Sam Lucia introduce Lieutenant Lindsay Savage.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Garcia and members of the council. I hope that you didn't grow too attached to Lieutenant Billings because he was transferred as of January 10th. He's moving on to bigger and better things. He's one of those A-team guys that whenever something happens in the county, there's a list of people you turn to, and he was one of them. I'm excited to announce, though, that we also got an A-team replacement for him. Our new executive officer is Lieutenant Lindsay Savage, and I just wanted to introduce him to you tonight. Let him say a few words.
I want to thank everybody for welcoming me here. I've been a resident of the High Desert for 44 years, well endowed with the desert, and I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. We have a presentation. Dana Armstrong will be doing a presentation and presenting awards. Dana?
That on? There we go. Thank you, Mayor Garcia and members of the City Council. I'm here tonight to recognize the winners of our annual Victorville Recycles Week event. This event is held during the first week in November. It is sponsored by the City of Victorville Recycling Program and Birktech Waste Industries. Victorville Recycles Week was started in November of 2007 by Ro Ratliff, who now works in Public Works. She worked for recycling back then. She left us to go to Public Works, but her good idea remained with the recycling program. This program is intended to increase the awareness and participation in the city's recycling programs by getting our local schools involved. During Recycles Week, schools participate in a variety of activities to earn points. The schools that earn the most points can win cash prizes. Individual students can also win prizes in a poster contest, a sculpture contest, and prizes are provided by Birktech Waste Industries as well as the City of Victorville Recycling Program. Here are the highlights of this year's event. We had 13 schools participate. Over 1,000 posters from 11 schools were entered in the poster contest. 69 sculptures from 9 different schools. 86 in-class presentations were made to about 2,600 students. We had 10 schools sign up for our new assembly program, All That Trash, which is actually about recycling. And they all told there will be 18 assemblies given to over 6,000 students. We had 7 schools participate in our community cleanup program and lend us over 300 volunteers for that. We had 11 schools do the bottle and can recycling contest, 8 did the newspaper contest, and all told we estimate that we made contact with over 9,600 students during the course of this event. At this time, I would like to invite Sharon Mitchell from Birktech Waste Industries to come forward. Birktech is a major sponsor of this event. They're our city's refuse and recycling hauler, and they've been a great supporter of this event for many years, and Sharon now does the bulk of the work. She's a very hardworking lady. She did all of those, what was it, how many in-class presentations? 26 or something in-class presentations, or 86? 86 in-class presentations. So Sharon has some certificates for the winners. I also would like to invite Hayden Martin from Assemblyman Jay Obernolte's office to join us, and also the mayor, Gloria Garcia, to come down and assist with the presentations.
Did you want me to
Yeah,
come in?
and we'll get some photos. But first, I would like to, we're going to just go through 4 things. I promise I'll be quick, council. But they're such great projects. We love to recognize these people. The first student that I would like to invite down, we're going to award the winner of the Recycled Sculpture Contest. So I would like to invite Yasmin Hall Scott to come forward and her family. Yasmin is a student at Galileo Academy 101, and she did we had over 100, we had 69 sculptures this year, so the competition was fierce. And her winning entry was called the DNA Tree, and it is out in the lobby. You should take a look at it as you leave the meeting tonight. It's fantastic. We've never seen anything like it. It's absolutely fantastic. And let's get the mayor next to the students, okay? There we go. We're playing a little bit of photographic. They're taller than she is, she says. Thank you. And as the winner of the contest, she gets a $100 check as the winner. Congratulations. It's a wonderful sculpture. You did a great job. Thank you very much. Okay. All right. Thank you very much. The next person we would like to recognize is the winner of our recycling poster contest. Her name is Kimberly Mann. She is a student at Silverado High School. There were over 1,000 posters. Hers was judged to be the very best, and myself and Sharon and Mayor Garcia were all on the judging contest, and I can tell you it gets a little overwhelming with 1,000 posters, but hers was the best. We enjoyed the artwork and the variety of messages on the poster. It said, we can make a difference, we can do better, save the earth. All of those are very positive messages. Thank you very much, and congratulations. She also wins a $100 prize. Next, we want to recognize the winner of the YouTube contest. This was a new contest we introduced last year. The winner this year, we'd like to invite Nick Hartman from West Palms Conservatory Elementary School to come down. West Palms is a visual and performing arts focused school, and you can really tell from their YouTube entry. It's about 1.5 minutes long. The theme is Recycling Pirates, and it's really a lot of fun. The closing slogan in it is recycling ARG, life depends on it. So it was very cute. We're going to put a link to it. We're going to put a link to it up on the city's environmental Facebook page. Great. Congratulations. It was a great video. And then finally, I want to recognize the First Place School. I would like to invite representatives from Mountain View Montessori School to come forward. This is the second time that Mountain View Montessori has been the grand prize winner. They are a small school, but they are a mighty school. They do such a great job with this. They won the trophy, the perpetual trophy, back in 2011, and now they're back in 2014. Here we're, okay. Some of the things that they did 100, thank you, and congratulations. They are the winner of they're the winner of a $1,000 prize as being the greatest points winner school in this competition. They submitted 116 posters, 11 sculptures. They did community cleanup day. They did 8 in-class presentations. They had the assembly program. They went to our MRF. They did a clothing drive and collected almost a ton of clothing. And they did the newspaper and CRV recycling drive. They have a fantastic on-campus recycling program, and they just really do it all. So congratulations. You guys do a great job. And more important than the $1,000 check, I think, is the perpetual trophy, and which is in the lobby, and you can see it. Everybody can see it on the way out. I know they covet it. So you're going to have to step it up even more for next year to hang on to it. One final thing I just want to say to put this into perspective, the reason we do this is to promote our programs. Just as a reminder, every bit of trash that goes in the trash cans goes directly to the county landfill. It costs the city about $40 a ton to get rid of it. It adds up to over $2.5 million a year. But every little bit that goes into the blue recycling cans goes directly to our recycling facility. We save money on landfill fees, and we also make money from the sale of materials. Last fiscal year, our recycling program provided a net benefit to residents of over $500,000. So I really hope that this contest will inspire people to use that program. It's all good when you put it in the recycling bin. It all just goes to the landfill, gets dumped on the ground and covered up with dirt when you put it in the trash can. And that's a waste both of resources and money. So just a reminder to use that program, and it really does make a difference what you do. In closing, I want to thank the council for giving me this time, and the mayor for helping with the presentations of the certificates, and also thank you to Burtech for their sponsorship. Thank you to Sharon. She's very hardworking. I'm amazed she still stands after Victorville Recycles Week. She does 99% of the work, and we really appreciate her help, Burtech sponsorship. And finally, a final thank you and round of applause to all the winners in the schools. Thank you very much.
Okay, at this time, I open the public hearing, and we have item B1, a city council of the city of Victorville public hearing called for the purpose of hearing arguments for and against approval of the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program for the widening of the Bear Valley Road Bridge over the BNSF Railroad is set forth in resolution number 14-076 entitled, A Resolution of the City Council of the City of Victorville, State of California, adopting the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring program for the Bear Valley Road overhead at BNSF project. And is there any discussion from council members?
Not until after the public.
Okay, then we can make a motion then.
First, you should open the public hearing.
I did.
Okay.
Public hearing is open.
Madam Clerk, did you have any cards on this item?
Not on this one, I don't have. I don't have any cards for this item here, B1. So I close the public hearing, and we move on to B2. I'll read it
Mayor
first.
Garcia, if the council could vote on item B1 since the public hearing has been closed.
Okay, very good. So let's vote. Let's make a motion on B1.
Adoption of Resolution 14-076.
Yes.
I so move.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy.
I open public hearing for B2. Oh, sorry, I didn't vote. There. Okay.
The voting screen's working. I'm not seeing any votes on item B1 showing up.
They're showing up on the screens on this side of the dais, at least.
Yeah, they're showing up here as well.
How does everyone vote? Are they all yes votes?
Aye.
Okay,
Yes.
it's not showing up on my screen. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we're going to item B2. I will read it, and then I do have some cards, and then I will call up the people that have filled out a card. A city council of the City of Victorville public hearing called for the purpose of hearing arguments for and against approval of the revision of the Victorville Municipal Code to prohibit smoking and vaping in all city parks, sports fields, recreation areas, and area parking lots as set forth in ordinance number 2329 entitled an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville amending Chapter 6.14 smoking by adding to Section 6.14.010 definitions and adding Section 6.14.035 prohibiting smoking and vamping in all city parks, sports fields, recreational areas, and area parking lots.
Before you open the public hearing, Madam Mayor, I have a couple of questions of staff, please. In the write-up, we have a letter from Loma Linda University dated May 28 of 2014, talking about the proposed town ordinance that bans smoking in public parks. Doesn't say it's to town leaders, but somehow was that Apple Valley? Even though
No.
it's addressed to the city of Victorville?
No, it would have been the City of Victorville, but that letter, I believe, would have been prepared for the Community Services Advisory Committee meeting, which occurred in May of last year.
All right. So at the present time, there is smoking allowed in public parks? Is that
At
correct?
the present time, smoking is allowed in public parks, yes.
That was all I had, Madam Mayor.
Okay, very good. So I open the public hearing, and I do have one card. Richard Bounds, will you come up?
Good evening, Mayor Garcia, members of the City Council. First, I want to thank the Community Services Advisory Committee for recommending that we amend this ordinance to ban smoking in the public parks. We already know about the health hazards of cigarettes. I mean, that's why cigarettes are banned from restaurants, malls, workplace, outdoor, wherever. Smoking is banned for a reason, because it's unhealthy. Secondhand smoke has proven that it can also cause cancer. The one area that they're allowed to smoke in Victorville is at parks. Two examples that I've encountered recently myself is I have one grandson who plays Little League over at Hook Park, and we're sitting in the stands watching the game while people around are smoking. And not only is that we're all smelling, the secondhand smoke, that's also a real bad example for the kids that are out there playing. Another example is one of my other grandsons, who happens to be a sheriff here in Victorville. His son, my great-grandson, had a one-year birthday party at Mojave Vista Park. And it was the same thing. While the kids were running around and having a good time, there's also people around smoking. I'm not against smoking. It's not that people that we're saying that people that smoke are bad or anything. It's just that the people that were out in the public places, we shouldn't have to be subjected to somebody else's smoke. And, one of the arguments that we heard, I'm also a legislative ambassador for the American Cancer Society, and I represent Assembly District 33. And one of the other things that we're trying to do is with smoking being banned also in parks, that's one of the areas where a majority of the kids hang out. And so when people are out there playing or doing what they're doing and they see people smoking, they're going to think it's okay. And we're trying to get kids to not start smoking, because if we can keep them from starting to smoke, then we're not going to have to deal with them later in life if they develop, whether it's a heart disease or lung cancer or anything else. And my other point is I've heard some arguments against where they say, well, how are people going to enforce that and all that? Well, 98% of the people that are law-abiding citizens that smoke, if they know they're not allowed to smoke in a park, they're just not going to smoke. Just like they don't smoke at movie theaters and restaurants. They're just not going to smoke. And so what that will do, that also cut down the cigarette butts and everything else that are discarded in the parks. And so when they do bring their animals or whatever, they're not to worry about picking up, or eating the cigarette butts and stuff. So I know there's a lot of other cities in the state that have banned smoking in the parks, and I just hope that the council will take into effect and add that amendment to where we just will ban smoking in the city parks. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions or any discussion on B2?
Any other members to speak?
Is there anyone else that would like to speak? I don't have any other cards, but if there's someone else that would like to speak. Just come up to the podium and give your name, please.
My name is Goldie Bethel. I go to the bingo parlor, Community Bingo Hall, and they have two parts, non-smoking and smoking. The smoke comes over on the other side where the non-smoking is. I don't smoke. But the thing is that on Friday nights and on Sunday evenings, it's so smoky in there that you can't even stand it. And they do smoke in the hallway there. Because you were saying there's no smoking in restaurants and stuff, there's smoking there. And I've asked before, and nobody's done anything, but it's always on Friday nights mostly, and in Sundays and the evening. And I don't think anybody in the city works in the evening to go even check it. But I wish somebody would go on a Friday night or a Sunday after 5:30 and check the smoking, because it's bad for the people that work there. I mean, it's not good for anybody. So that's the only thing I wanted to say. We do have smoking in Victorville.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak?
Robert Harriman. Good evening, Mrs. Garcia and council. I would just like to point out one other thing. Several years ago, 10 years ago, I was vice president of Victorville Little League, and most everything was conducted at Liberty Park. And I found it rather offensive to the kids and the players when the people were smoking in the park. So I would ask that you guys proceed and pass this amendment, this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? I close the public hearing then.
I have a question.
Question?
Mr. Robertson, did I understand that there was some entity recommended that this be continued for some reason?
Yes. There's kind of two pieces to this, the true cigarette smoking issue and then the vaping issue. The vaping issue is one that is still evolving as far as people using e-cigarettes or vaping, vapor cigarettes, whatever you call them. And in the interim, since this went to the Community Services Advisory Committee, the technology has changed, and the Cancer Society is requesting that this ordinance be continued so that it can encompass those new changes to the technology, essentially. So given that request, as well as there has been some public comment on at least some social media sites that I'm aware of, that there's some question about whether or not vaping is or isn't hazardous to the other people other than the person actually doing it. Obviously, the the folks that have written in are all in support of banning vaping as well. So the staff's recommendation at this point in time would be to adopt the ordinance with regard to smoking and to cross through the vaping section and send that back to the Community Services Advisory Commission to revisit the definition of vaping and e-cigarettes so that it either becomes more inclusive or less inclusive based on the council's discussion and direction at this meeting. So if the council would like to either individually talk with their committee members, or if you'd like to have a discussion about the vaping e-cigarette piece of it now, so that the staff can relay that to the Community Services Advisory Committee, it would be helpful for us to know which way you would be leaning on whether or not you would want to ban both smoking and e-cigarettes and vaping in the parks.
Madam Mayor, Council, I believe that there is heavy public support. I agree with Mr. Bounce. We all understand the hazards of smoking. I don't want to put that off. And so I believe that we could move with that. The vaping issue is something that has a lot of print, a lot of study, and we don't know for sure the rules. I don't want to be amending this every council meeting. I agree with our city manager that it would be best if we go ahead and adopt this ordinance as presented, striking vaping, but referring it back to the committee and addressing that as soon as we possibly can.
Madam Mayor, just one comment, and understand, I was a 2-pack-a-day smoker and quit 40 years ago. It was one of the 2 or 3 smartest things I ever did in my life. So I'd like to see everybody stop smoking. On the other hand, I'm a little concerned about adopting an ordinance if we don't have an effective means of enforcement. And I think in this case, enforcement is going to have to be from public pressure. If we put up no smoking signs, I mean, smoking in a Little League baseball stadium, that's just amazing to me. But a park is a different matter. Airports have now created smoking rooms. If you've ever been by one, they isolate these people in a closed room, and they're all in there smoking, and my God, it's almost a scourge on the air. But I don't know, are we concerned about an ordinance that Sam's not going to send out deputies to the parks to arrest people for smoking? I mean, are we concerned about this?
It certainly isn't going to be a top-level call. However, if there's a problem, if this is on the books, it does give the deputies the opportunity to issue a citation. Especially if it's a recurring issue, then it may rise to another level. But do I anticipate a deputy going to this call versus most of the other calls they're going to get? No, probably not. Probably not. But if there's a deputy nearby, if there's a deputy in the park, it is something that could be enforced. And just having the signs up, having the ordinance in place and having the signs up would be relatively effective, as Mr. Bounce suggested.
And the public who uses those parks and supports this will do more to enforce it than anyone else.
And I believe there is a portion of the ordinance that does require the posting of those signs. Isn't that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so then our vote would be to accept the ordinance then for the smoking?
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem, did you make that as a motion?
I will make that as a motion for the council, and that would be to proceed with the ordinance, to adopt, to require, well, to disallow smoking, as it's pointed out in the proposed ordinance, but strike the vaping, refer that matter back to the committee, which has done a good job, outstanding job. And the agreement with the council is to address this as soon as reasonably possible when we get the information back from the committee.
Thank you.
That's my motion.
That motion would include further waiver, further reading of the ordinance. And
I'm sorry, yes.
The ordinance title, and it should be amended with the deletion of the reference to vaping, and with respect to deletion of the section that has definitions, which is section 614.010.
Motion's been made by Mr. Cox.
Not seeing what we see.
No, I'm not.
Green is showing
Oh,
seconded by
I
Jim
got this,
Kennedy.
Okay.
Nothing's showing up on my screen if you're selecting the
technical
buttons,
problem.
so I'll have to do it.
Madam Clerk, call for a roll call vote.
Is there a second?
Yeah, Mr. Kennedy.
Oh, Mr.
Mr.
Kennedy
seconded
second.
it, according to the screen I can see here.
How does the council vote?
Aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously.
Sometimes technology is your friend, sometimes not so much.
Perhaps we should do away with the technology.
Okay,
Let's move on to item 3.
Okay, then we move on to Agenda B3, a City Council of the City of Victorville public hearing to hear arguments for and against amending portions of the Title 16 of the Victorville Municipal Code, establishing single-family residential design guidelines and modifying the development standards for single-family residential with an environmental exemption as set forth in ordinance number 2318 entitled, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Victorville approving amendment Division 13-00005, amending portions of Title 16 of the Municipal Code, establishing single-family residential design guidelines, and amending the development standards for single-family residential, City of Victorville. And I open the public hearing on B3, and I believe I do have one card or two. I have one card. Gordon Nichols, if you want to come up.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you for allowing me this time. I just wanted to briefly read a letter from the Building Industry Association. As previously stated in our December 10th letter, the BIA wishes to express our appreciation to the City of Victorville for allowing us to participate in the focus group and providing our industry's input. We fully support the residential guidelines which were originally presented to the Planning Commission on December 10th, mainly Development Code 13-0005, amendments to Title 16. However, BIA opposes the patio cover amendment, which was verbally added at the Planning Commission meeting on December 10th. We believe the patio cover amendment is too prescriptive and does not constitute a need for government regulation to preserve the health, safety, and welfare of the community. Specifically, we are referencing Section 16-3.08.090 D62E, which prescribes patio cover options on all dwelling units, which shall be incorporated into each stock plan. The BIA is recommending that the city adopt the residential guidelines with the exclusion of Section 16-03.08090 patio covers. Thank you for your time. Once again, we like to thank you for allowing us to participate in the design guidelines. We think that the design guidelines which were presented are the best practices on how to make the City of Victorville a better place. However, the patio cover, we would like that excluded. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any discussion or questions from council?
I have questions after you close the public hearing, Madam Chair.
I close the public hearing.
I have a question to the planning staff or whoever's handling this item. That patio cover is not mandatory. As I understood it, was an option for the buyer. Did I misunderstand that?
No, you're correct. Patio covers are not a requirement of a house. At the Planning Commission hearing, Commissioner Kurth thought that one of the worst streetscape views oftentimes on a street is looking at somebody's homemade patio cover from the street. So he thought that if we could ask the developer to provide an option to a home buyer, they might be closer to purchasing something that is architecturally compatible, looks nice, the roof materials match the house, and it looks appropriate. It provides a better look from the street. The Planning Commission agreed, and they all voted unanimously to put that amendment in.
Well, I like the idea of an option, except
And
that a patio cover is not required under any
And
circumstances
you're
at
absolutely,
all.
and I didn't finish your question,
I'm
I
sorry.
guess, was that you're absolutely right. There's no requirement for a homeowner to buy it or purchase it from the builder. So it's not saying that they have to do it. The BIA is opposed to the general idea of requiring a developer to come in with a plan to have that on every model that they offer. We're just saying it's the requirement would be when you submit a set of plans of housing that you're proposing to build in that tract, that they also have to offer a patio cover with them.
If a homeowner purchases a new home, does not have a patio, and they want to erect a patio, are they required to get a building permit?
Yes.
But they can attach it to the fascia board? And
We have added, there's other language in the design guidelines that will speak to looking for same materials that match the house, similar roofing materials and everything. So yes, with these, we will also have the ability to review homemade or homeowner-built patio covers where we didn't have that before even. But this was a separate requirement of the tract developer.
yeah, I just have mixed feelings. I was elated when I thought they were going to offer it as an option, because I know almost every homeowner wants a patio. To have it built as a part of the structure is going to improve the neighborhood, it's going to improve everything, but I understand where the BIA is coming from. Thank you for clarifying it.
Sure.
Chris,
Go ahead.
I've got a few issues and questions. First of all, the discussion around patio covers did come up at the focus group meeting, and as the only member of the council that was actually at that focus group meeting, I don't think it was properly resolved. I think Commissioner Kerr's introduction of that at the Planning Commission came out a result of a conversation he and I had. I recently bought a KB home, would have liked to have had the option of building a patio cover that matched the home at the time. But that's not to say that I want to require existing residents that have been homes that have been built for 20 some odd years to build a patio cover that matches their existing structure. There's a lot of patio cover companies out there that do a great job in building patio covers that work just functionally as well, but may not architecturally blend with the house. So for that purpose alone, I think that this issue discovers more discussion at the focus group level. It kind of reminds me, Mayor Pro Tem Cox, of your conversation and discussions that we've had on what constitutes a porch. If you'll recall what that is, and so what constitutes a patio cover, what's the size, how much coverage area, and the fact that it would have to architecturally match, because this becomes a discretionary issue at staff, from my understanding, matching an existing home that was built back in the 80s just does not make any sense to me. If we were talking, and again alluding to the fact that this needs to go back to the focus group, if we were talking about a new home, of course you'd want the patio cover to match the existing structure. But asking someone that's been in their home for 20 years that all of a sudden can afford to build a patio cover that, oh, by the way, it has to look exactly like the house that you built 20 years ago, I just think that that's a stretch in the slightest bit of the terminology. From my perspective, I think what we accomplished at the focus group was appropriate. I'd like to see the balance of this approved tonight. Send the patio cover issue back to the focus group for additional discussion. And it's my understanding that Councilmember Kennedy is going to join us on the focus group now that Councilmember Valles is no longer on there. I think it would be appropriate to have him as a part of the discussion. But also, when you say the Planning Commission was unanimous, it's my understanding there were only 3 commissioners present that night. We have a new commissioner that hasn't had a chance to chime in on this issue. Lionel Dew, I think he should have the opportunity, and another commissioner that wasn't present that night. Not having a full planning commission on such a big issue, kind of a problem for me. So that's my thoughts.
Well, now that enlarges the question, because I just wanted to make it, or be clear at least, on what this ordinance requires. Does it only require that a developer building a new home offer that for sale to a home buyer? I mean, I don't see that as onerous if that's all there is. Is there more than that to
But
this?
it is only asking for an option, a patio cover option that we can review when we review the plans, when we're reviewing the design guidelines, to make sure the patio cover is consistent with the architecture, the materials, the colors, and
But this is new development, not existing development?
correct, correct.
But did you not say that part of the ordinance would look
Yes,
to include
yes.
that?
If you come in for,
see,
if any homeowner who comes in for a patio cover we would also look to make sure a patio cover is, and I agree, completely agree.
That's
It
a lot
would be
bigger issue.
difficult to do on the back of a lot of houses that were built 20 years ago. I completely agree. There wouldn't
yeah,
be a lot
and
of
they are
architecture to make-
separate, but I think, again, my point is, and to your benefit because you're going to be coming on, this was lightly discussed at the focus group, but it was not hashed out. It was not agreed upon. And it was more a result of a conversation I had with Commissioner Kurth, more or less my personal preference. I still wish KB Home would have offered that, but at the end of the day, they didn't. And I think until that's worked out, alluding to some of the issues that Mayor Pro Tem Cox has brought up about porches in the past, I mean, I need to understand exactly what we're looking at that would constitute a patio cover. Because quite frankly, there are developers that would build a 3x3 slab off the back, sliding glass door, and cover that and call it a patio cover. Now, if that's what they'll make it look architecturally correct. That doesn't make any sense to me either. So you could get a lot of different scenarios here. That's why I think the focus group needs to take it up more. And I don't know if the public hearing's still open or not. If it's closed, I'll make a motion to that effect.
I had closed the public hearing already.
Okay.
Can I ask one question? I was a little bit confused about existing homes, new homes. It seems to me that it needs to be addressed. If the focus group is where it should be addressed, I don't want it to die. But since we have so much in agreement with this, including the BIA, it seemed like the better part of valor is to go ahead and establish it and refer. If a part of the motion is to refer this back to the focus group for further study, that would be.
Yeah, that's my
second.
motion, that we adopt everything here with the exception of the patio cover issue and send that back to the focus group. That would be my motion with waiving further reading of the ordinance.
So essentially, the ordinance would be adopted with the exclusion of section 16-3, 08090D6, small Roman 2E, which is the patio cover section.
Correct, that's my motion.
Okay.
Okay.
And is there a second?
Kidding.
Motion by Mr. McEachran, second by Mr. Kennedy. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, we move on to consent calendar. And I understand that we are pulling item number 22,
I believe.
For discussion. Does anyone have anything else they want to?
I'll move the
Cool.
balance of the consent calendar.
Second. Oh, somebody already seconded it.
Yes, Mr. Kennedy has seconded.
Oh, he's quick with that.
Oh, no, it's this is still up.
I'm willing to
Can we just turn off these screens?
The votes are showing up on my screen now.
We want Brendan down here after the meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You can vote on
Opposed?
this one. We've pulled 22, Mr. Negretti. You can vote on this item.
None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
You indicated that 22 was pulled from the consent, which would require a separate action. Is that correct?
That is correct. Just to avoid any appearance of bias, I'm recommending that Councilmember Negretti recuse himself from participation on this. He is employed by the Army, although this is a very small division of the Army. Just to avoid any appearance of bias, I think that would be the prudent thing to do.
I had a question on this, I'm glad it was pulled for a sec. Is this the lease agreement that is subject of ongoing discussion at the base?
No, this is actually a different issue. This issue, or actually this lease, involves U.S. Army Reserve Truck Depot, separate facility than the subject of the latest discussions involving the Army.
I'm sorry. Okay. Then I don't have any questions at all.
A motion?
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. McEachern. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries with Councilmember Negrete absent.
Now we move to agenda number, D, written communications. And I do have two cards on agenda number D8, so I'll wait until I get to those. D1,
I don't.
D1 is request the city council appoint members to the various boards, and I am prepared to do that tonight.
I have no question.
Yeah.
Are you ready to act on that one?
Appropriate to say
Okay.
who's going where.
Okay. This is the presentation that I have. Mayor Cox has delegate to the Mojave Desert Air Quality Management District Board, alternate to the Mountain Desert Measure I Committee, first alternate to BBWRA, delegate to BBEDA, delegate to Desert Mountain Division of League of California Cities, and Mayor Pro Tem, that was Mayor Pro Tem, Mayor Cox, Mayor Pro Tem Cox. I didn't change that, okay? And then Council Member McEachern, he has alternate to BBDA, second alternate to BBWRA, delegate to SENBAG, delegate to the Mountain Desert Measure I Committee, and delegate to SCAG. Mayor Garcia has delegate to BBTA, alternate to Desert Mountain Division of League of California Cities, alternate to Public Entity Risk Management Authority, delegate to Mojave Desert and Mount Solid Waste JPA, delegate to AB 939 Solid Waste Advisory Task Force, and Audit Committee. Councilmember Kennedy has Audit Committee, delegate to BBWRA, alternate to SENBAG, and Councilmember Negrete has alternate to BBTA, alternate to Mojave Desert and Mount Solid Waste JPA, alternate to Mojave Desert Air Quality Management District Board. And that's how it stands. Any questions?
Yes, please.
Madam Mayor, not that I want to do this, but there has been a couple of occasions in the past that I needed to attend the BBWRA meeting because neither the delegate nor either of the two alternates were available. So at some point in the past, I was named as the third alternate. I don't get a tiara or anything that goes along with that, but I don't know if it needs to be part of this discussion or not. Maybe that's a question for the city clerk.
That was actually approved by resolution.
Okay. So I can never get out of it?
Oh, it's still effective.
Not until it's rescinded.
And if I might, I did mention to Mayor Garcia in the hopes of allowing Councilmember Negrete to be more involved in certain things. I serve as a regional council member on SCAG, so I'm already at the General Assembly and a part of that organization. It might be good to have someone else from the city serve as our delegate to SCAG for the General Assembly, and if the council's open to that, I'd like to see him serve in that role. It's only one meeting a year, but at least it'll give him the opportunity to serve at another level on behalf of the city, since I'm already there as a regional council member. If you guys are all open to that.
Do you accept?
Yes. Sorry, Eric, I just threw you under the bus there.
Thank you.
But that's the change that we have here.
Was that a motion?
Is there a motion to
I'll
approve
move
the
it
appointments?
to approve based upon that change.
Is there a second?
Mr. Cox, second.
Thought I did.
I'm sorry, I didn't.
She just can't see it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Second.
I'm informing her
I
as I
can't see
need
it
to.
yet. Motion by Mr. McEachern, second by Mr. Cox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we have item D2, and I don't have any cards for that either. Request the City Council ratify the expenditure plan for the HSGP allocation for 2014/2015 and authorize the city manager or his designee to process all documents required for the program administration. Are there any questions?
So move.
Is there a second? Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now we move on to D3. Request the City Council approve or deny the request for variance from the requirement to connect to the public sewer system for 12949 Laurel Oak Road.
Is this the one that withdrew the request?
No, the following one. We need a second.
I'm sorry. I'm going to second. I have a question with the city manager or someone. What's the distance again from the existing sewer? 150 feet?
129 feet on
129
this
feet.
one. Yes.
Wow, that's sure expensive for some reason. I think at some point in time we have to have a discussion on the connections to the sewers because of the extreme costs that are associated even if the sewer is in front of the house. I'm not sure at different times over the history of the city at one time extended the sewer line to the property line in the front yard. The property owner then would connect it, but my understanding at the present time, the property owner goes all the way to the center of the street, makes the connection to the city system. It's done under contract with city permit under city inspection, but if we are going to want people to connect to the sewer, economically, this would cause an awful lot of people to make that request when our whole idea is that we get people connected to the sewers. I want to second it with the hopes that this will become a discussion from the staff sometime in the near future.
On these items, because of some controversy in the past, the staff no longer makes a recommendation. So we would need whoever makes the motion to recommend or make the motion either for approval of the request for a variance or denial and requiring them to connect to sewer.
And in addition to that, I would like that motion, if it's so made, to be based on the findings that the application of the requirement would result in practical difficulty, unnecessary hardship, and results inconsistent with the general purpose and intent of the development code.
Yeah, there's really no opportunity for staff to make that argument one way or another, so it has to come to council. So in years past, staff was essentially forced to argue against grandma who is on a fixed income who has a $30,000 sewer bill to connect. And so that's why we stopped making a recommendation and essentially just leave it up to the council to make a decision.
But the current, as I understand it, the current policy is if the homeowner is within, or the lot, I'm not sure which way, within 150 feet of the city's sewer, they're supposed to connect.
I can't recall the exact number. I thought it was 200 or
Well, maybe
250.
it's 200?
It's in that range.
200.
200. Yeah, if they're within 200, the ordinance would require them to connect. They can, and in this case, have applied for variance from that ordinance because of the cost involved.
But the only reason they are requesting the waiver is because the septic system they have had in place has failed.
That is correct.
So they have to go lower.
And that's a little bit different than a new development issue. And
Very much.
we have consistently, and I've been on this council, approved these because of their extreme cost.
Yeah, they tend to be about 10 times greater than digging the new seepage pit or even putting in a new septic system altogether.
Yeah. I'll make the motion to approve it
With the necessary findings.
with the necessary findings. Approve the waiver.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None
Aye, but I didn't second it. It's still up there from the last second I made.
I know. It's
Okay.
not showing up on my screen.
It's okay.
So. Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item D4, the owner has withdrawn his request for the variance, and I'll read it. Request the City Council approve or deny the request for a variance from the requirement to connect to the public sewer system for 14968 Hopeland Street, but they withdrew their request.
Since that has been withdrawn by the owner, is there any reason to have any findings for the record?
Nope. No need to take any action on the item.
D5, request the Victorville Water District Board of Directors award a contract to DDH Apple Valley Construction, Inc. in the amount of $1,073,432 for the small diameter replacement of water mains in Old Town. Any questions, discussion?
I just, I noticed that we have a budget amount of $692,000, projected cost of $1.2 million, almost $1.3. Costing a lot more than what we budgeted.
Why?
That's my question.
I'd actually have to have Mr. McGlade come up to speak to that.
I mean, the bids obviously are not out of line when I look at the other bids, but why did we get so far off on budgeting? Am I missing something?
We have funds available, but this project is an emergency?
What we found is that we spent something like $200,000 last year in fixing leaks in these small diameter steel pipelines. So we expanded the scope and diminished the scope in the mainline pipeline budget. So the transfer of money would be from one capital project to this capital project.
The money's there, you're just getting it from somewhere else.
I'm sorry?
The money's there, you're just getting it from somewhere else?
Correct. Okay. Yes, it's all contained. There was about a $7.1 million capital improvement budget for the water district.
Does this delay another specific project?
The mainline pipeline budget was not specific enough to be able to say that some project gets delayed. It's just less money to be put into mainline replacements. We deemed this more important simply because this one leaks more than anywhere else.
All right. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Kennedy, second by Mr. Cox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
D6, request the City Council, number 1, approve amendment number 1 to lead track use permit by and between the City of Victorville and Church and Dwight Company, Inc., and approve an additional revenue appropriation in the amount of $7,500.
Move for approval.
Second.
Motion by Mr. McEachron, second by Mr. Cox. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, motion carries unanimously.
D7, request the City Council adopt the resolution approving the issuance of the written report pursuant to Government Code Section 65858D for the urgency interim ordinance number 2320 imposing a moratorium on money service businesses. And we have backup material and addendum to item D7. I'm not sure. Hold on a sec.
What is the interim period, Mr. Attorney?
Initially, you adopted a urgency ordinance for 45 days, then you adopted a 6-month extension, and per the government code, there's a requirement that before the expiration of the 6-month moratorium period, the council is to adopt a report as to the findings and determinations that have been made by staff to date. For your information, at the next meeting, staff is actually going to be asking for an additional extension. But this report that you would be approving tonight is to ensure compliance with the government code requirements.
Thank you. Questions?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Cox, second by Mr. Kennedy. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
We move to item D8, and I'll read it first, and I do have some cards. Discussion and possible action for the consideration of constructing a skateboard park facility in the city of Victorville. And the first card that I have is Robert Harriman. And after you, I have Chad Collins and Jules Espinal. So they can be ready to come up. Oh, one more.
Good evening again.
And William from Firmage.
I just have a couple of questions. This reads kind of vague to me. Are we going to discuss a possible skate park on City Park and the city maintain and insure the park? Or are we going to just discuss and talk about it, a private entity building a skate park in the city, which I would be for? But a skateboard park has failed in almost every city continuously. We had one at the fairgrounds. You know, I just don't think the city has the funds to insure a skate park in one of the city parks. I personally believe that the private sector runs things a little better than the city anyways, so why don't the public sector build the skate park? I don't think the city's had enough problems just keeping the golf course, operating to break even, not even, profitable. But to have a skateboard park in one of the city parks and then to have to insure it or go through some type of process where you have to sign a waiver before you get on the park to skate, I just don't think is moving in the right direction. I am all for a skate park, don't get me wrong, but I just don't think it needs to be affiliated with the city of Victorville in essence, but privately, yes. The insurance on that is going to be an astronomical number, and whether it's a private entity or the city. I mean, that's been the case for years. I've been around for not as long as maybe some of you guys, but the skateboard parks, I have seen many of them, even where I grew up in San Dimas. Twice there was one built and it failed, and it's a waste. I mean, it's a waste of money for the city to be affiliated with it. Again, a skateboard park in the city is great. I actually do feel a more appropriate thing, if the city wants to get involved with something, we don't have a YMCA chapter in Victorville, which has a multitude of things, with some diversity for lots of different programs. So I guess I'm asking for some clarification on this.
Thank you. Chad Collins.
Council, how's it going? Mayor, how are you guys? I just wanted to basically come down, introduce myself. My name's Chad Collins. I'm a Victorville resident, father of 3 children, Orange County native, moved here 2 years ago, bought a house out here. Much easier living out here. You don't have the hustle and the bustle of the city. I'm sure you guys see that, understand that. My son, throughout my whole life, I'm 35 years old, and I've seen skate parks in the past, I want to say the greater half of the past 20 years become a very common phenomenon. Almost every single major city has a skate park. To reference the gentleman that just stepped up, as far as the city, taking, I've seen skate parks of many different nature. Ones where you have to fill out a waiver, and, you're waiving all, insurance purposes. These skateboarders that are going to this park, I mean, I'm sure we're all very, very level-headed. Anybody that's not is going to be there with a parent. They all know that they can smack their head if they're not wearing a helmet. They all know that they could break their arm. Okay, this is very, very obvious. Okay, and I do understand insurance policies, and it probably didn't work here for years. I've heard about a skate park previous that didn't work. However, if you go to, Fontana, which is right down the street, they have 2 skate parks that work wonderfully. Beautiful skate parks. One of them is gorgeous. The reason why I'm in such support of skate parks, my son is 11 years old. My son is an amateur skateboarder. He's got some of the top name brands backing him. He's traveled all over the world with his skateboarding, paid for. He is an athlete. Okay, this kid goes, his goal in life is to become a professional skateboarder. When I was a child and I looked up to skateboarding, it was so far out of reach. Skateboarding was just becoming something at that point. I still skateboard to this day. My youngest son, who's here, skateboards. My whole family skateboards. And I just want to say that skateboarding is not a bad thing. It's becoming more and more acceptable in the world. We have X Games. We have Dew Tour. We have these huge corporate financed entities that are flying athletes all around the world to compete for skateboarding, as well as BMX and some others. If you would, just quick second, about a year ago, after we had moved in, I went and I did some research on a skate park in Victorville. And again, to reference the gentleman that just came up here that seems he's very opposed to a skate park being in Victorville, I have over 5,000 signatures that I personally, with my family, with friends that are actually here. Pharmacy Board Shop, who's the biggest skateboard shop out here, helped me on this. They had, signatures inside. I went to the mall. I went everywhere. I gained over 5,000 signatures with phone numbers of community members, with families, without skateboarders, everybody. Over 5,000 signatures of people that would love to see a skate park in the city of Victorville. Apple Valley has one. The city of Adelanto has one. There's a way that we can make this work. Every other major city out there has a skate park. Barstow, Fontana, Rialto. San Bernardino, everywhere, Lake Forest, you know. And so on that note, I just want to say thank you for letting me speak. And I want to say that, you know, don't turn your head to the idea, because it can be a positive thing. It's a very positive thing in my son's life, and it's always been. Thank you.
Thank you. Now we have William Firmage.
Hello, Mayor Garcia and council members. My name is William Firmage. I live in Apple Valley. After reading the story in the Daily Press, Victorville Councilman Eric Negretti wants the city to consider a skate park. It was in December. I put the word out on social websites to get people here tonight in support of the very first much-needed bike skateboard park in the city of Victorville. I would say 95% of these biker skater kids have no family support, like Little League kids. That explains the low turnout for this meeting. These kids, young and old, just want a place to ride. They don't want to get caught up in the politics of it all. I've gone to a few Victorville meetings over the years asking for a bike skateboard combination freestyle park, along with blogging on local websites. Coming into Victorville from Apple Valley, the sign reads, "Welcome to Victorville, the key to the high desert." Victorville is supposed to be the heart of the high desert, since the 15 freeway and Route 66 runs through Victorville. Victorville should already have a nice high-end park for the youth. If you build a high-end park, people will drive hundreds of miles to ride it and spend money around its location. About 30 of us locals, just that I know of, go to Las Vegas all the time for that reason. There's over 30 high-end parks there. Victorville leaders, don't put in a hokey park like Hesperia did at Lime Street, one visit and you're done. Hesperia's park is subpar because the city didn't help out with it. To get Apple Valley Bike Skate Park, to get it funded that I worked on with the town, Verizon paid $400,000 for a cell tower land use at another park. The town council took $360,000 of that money and used it to fund our bike skate park. Some sort of deal like this is how Victorville could go about getting Victorville skate bike park done. It saddens me and a lot of others I spoke to that these local kids have to ride in these broken down parking lots along 7th Street while just up the road there's a multi-million-dollar country club. A skate park can attract skater and biking tourists if designed to do so. Dozens of high-end skate parks in the United States and abroad enjoy a reputation for being places these skate park users dream of visiting someday. Put in a high-end park along 7th where the kids already ride. Make it free so it will get used by all. People will visit on their way to Vegas parks and spend money eating locally here before hitting the freeway to continue their journey to the Vegas parks. A lot of the last speaker talked about, the first guy spoke about a lot of parks that fail. They fail because they're privately owned. When government puts in these parks, it's like they're used by all and they don't charge. And if you build it really high quality, people will drive 100 miles to go. They're like, yeah. And there's a websites that talk about skate parks and which ones are nice and worth going to. So if you build a nice park like that, it'll end up on this website and people will be blogging about it and they will just want to come here and spend money in town. And that's how you make your money, not by charging admission. Because if the parks charge admission, then the people just usually end up riding the park benches and the bus stops. And, you know what I'm saying? Because a lot of these kids, like I was saying, I'd say 99% of these kids, they go, bye, Mom, I'm going to the park. And they don't have like mom and dad there like these little league kids. They're kids that race BMX racing. There's a big following of these kids that race. But I'll wrap it up. Thanks for, Mayor and council members, thanks for taking this much needed project into consideration. This is long overdue for Victorville. Thank you.
Thank you. Jules Spinal.
Hello, Mayor and Council. My name is Jules Aspinall. I am 50 years old. I'm a skateboarder. I own 2 businesses here in the High Desert. I've been a resident for about 25 years, and my money goes down the hill because I get in my car once or twice a week, and I pack up my van and I drive to Lugan and Miguel. I drive to Montclair, Palm Desert, Lake Forest, Orange, and Costa Mesa, and that's where I skate. I also sponsor action sports. I'm also a council member at the Chuck Jones Center for Creativity, so I spend a lot of time in Costa Mesa. It would be really nice to have a place up here. I have 2 adult children, and I've heard for many, many years when they were growing up, we have nothing to do up here. There's nothing to do, there's no place to go. When they have friends from other cities, we don't have them come up because there is nothing for them to do. There is no place for them to go. We have theaters down there. Why go to a theater up here? Parks were so-so back in the day. They're a little bit better now up here. But I spend my money down there. I just recently went to the Girls Comedy Classic over the weekend. It was a big competition at Vans Skate Park in Orange. I booked a room for 2 days. I spent my money down there. I went to the bakeries down there. I ran my errands down there. I'll go to Michael's Arts and Crafts. I'll do the DMV down there because it's just much easier, more convenient, and I can go skate. You pack up your car, you hit 2 or 3 skate parks. If we had a nice skate park up here, there are so many people, like, you know, people have said, you travel to Vegas. I've traveled to Vegas to go skate. People come through. There's also Woodward and to Tehachapi that does cheer, they do BMX, and they do skateboarding. So all the people that spend a lot of money to put their kids in these camps for a week or 2 up in Woodward would travel through our area, stop, and skate. And it's not just skateboarders, it's spectators as well. Because if you go to a lot of the skate parks like Vans that I skate every Wednesday night, you'll be there skating and there's 25, 30, 40 people just up there watching. They're just spectators. They want to see. They're taking, you'll have photographs. People just come, they watch, they enjoy. I'm also a sponsor, so I sponsor a lot of skateboarders. I see a lot of families. I talk to a lot of families. It's not much different than dance or soccer or any of the other types of sports that go on all the time. These parents put a lot of money into it, and they travel from all over the world. This weekend we had a girl from Japan, one from Australia. They came from all over the United States, and this is money that's going into other areas because we all stay in the hotels. We all eat, and we stop and go to the show, and we shop, and we do things, but we do it somewhere else. So I think a skate park would be a really, really good addition. And he had mentioned YMCA. In Encinitas, they have the YMCA, the community center, and the skate park all together. So you can just kind of, you know, hop and do what you want to do. So it's all, you just see families with kids. I have kids that I work with 2 years old on a skateboard. And then it goes up to people my age and older. And you can incorporate, bring in the high school level in with the National Scholastic Skateboarding League, and bring the kids in from high school. It's something you can do by yourself. It's something that you can do in a group of people. It incorporates your health, balance, focus. There's a lot of things involved. It's not your typical, you know, what you see on the TV. I don't think I'm the typical, people look at me and they go, well, you don't skateboard. Well, yeah, I do. Maybe not as well as some people in this room, but well enough to go and spend my money in other places. So I would really think it would be a really good idea to have a skate park in the High Desert. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, now we go into public comments, and I do have some cards. I have Ruben Lucero. You have 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor, is that the public comment for items not on the agenda?
City manager and city council reports.
We need to finish the other item first. I have a brief comment from staff before the council discusses it, if that's all right.
That's fine.
Just to clarify, the staff has generally been supportive to the idea of having a skate park in Victorville. We have been approached over the years by various enthusiasts. Specifically, most of our research was done in 2007 and 8. That's the information that you have before you. Councilmember Negretti asked that this be agendized. We agendized it essentially for council discussion to answer one of the questions of the commenters. It's simply here for discussion and direction from the council as to whether or not the council would like us to further research this item. A couple of complicating factors before you get involved in that discussion, though. One is that most of our parks are pledged in a lease-back arrangement for some prior bond issuances, and it makes it very expensive for us to put a skate park at most of our existing parks. Not something we like, but it's something that we have to live with. Most of the cell towers that come in are extremely expensive simply because the agreement that we have with those bonds, and this is probably more technical detail than you really want to hear, the agreement is that if we're asking for a change to that facility because of that lease back, we actually pay our attorneys to propose the change, we pay their attorneys to review the change, make changes, and we pay our attorneys to review their changes, and so on and so forth. We pay both sides. So it's been very expensive for us to even modify a cell tower, let alone something as large as a skate facility. But it's not impossible. We have a couple of parks that are not covered by that, that maybe aren't in the most desirable locations. But certainly if funding is available, either from the private sector or public sector, there are areas that we could find to put in a park if that's the direction of the council. Much of this research was done, as I said, in 2007 and 8. As you'll recall, in 2009, we laid off 70-plus people. That continued in 2010, 2011. We were actually considering closing our racquetball facilities, considering closing our pool. Thankfully, the public stepped up and helped us keep the racquetball facilities open, and we were thankfully able to keep the pool open. But there was a time that we had no option to operate new facilities or put in new facilities because we were still just trying to keep what we had open. To answer one last question about whether or not there would be liability for the city, state law deems this a hazardous recreational activity, and it actually provides immunity to the city in the event we put in a skate park. The council would have to adopt rules that talk about and are clearly posted, talking about the safety equipment that must be worn, things like that. The only way that the city would ultimately have some responsibility with risk would be if we actually have it staffed. So long as we don't, and we couldn't afford to, in my opinion, so long as it's not a staffed facility, if it's simply open to the public with clear rules posted, the city actually has immunity according to state law. So that it really is a non-issue. Staff would not recommend any kind of a park that had staffing. There is some question, and should the council decide to direct staff to look into this further and come up with options, do a full feasibility study perhaps, we would need to look at the addition of the BMX portion, as Mr. Firmage suggested, because it was clear to staff back then that the skate portion has the immunity. We don't yet know because we haven't done that research as to whether or not a BMX component would fall into that same category.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a comment. Appreciate that, the background on that. And what my initial request is to look at the feasibility of doing this. I recognize there was a lot of work done already on this particular issue in the past, and I understand the complicating factors. But when you really look at the folks that are here, and I really do appreciate everybody that came out to participate and submit public comments. What we have here is a lack of amenities, quality of life, and there's a number of issues, and I wanted to use this particular case as a test. A city this size should have some sort of amenity like this. This is just one example, okay? So let's just focus on this one right now. So the bike park part of it, I agree with that. I mean, I would like to actually think of this more as a skate/bike park. Okay, fine. But going forward, what we're talking about is we're not talking about a 5,000 square foot park. We're talking about something that people would come to see, and we'd be known for something. And I'm talking about like an acre-sized park, you know. Now, if that's exclusive to skate, fine. And if there's another section for bike and an expansion area for further councils to consider, great. But now we're talking about amenities. Now we're talking about having somewhere to go, and it could be swimming pool, could be other things as well later on down the road, community center, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact is that we do have people driving to other locations. We do have proven models of a public-private partnership in other cities that have worked and worked well. It needs to be free, and what we need to have is the engagement from the actual private sector. Okay, and so when you have a public-private partnership, there's only so much the city can do, and we have limiting factors with the facilities we have. So what I'd like to do with that in mind, again, recognize the challenges, is I'd like to make a motion to have the city initiate a bike skate park committee that meets monthly and initiate a fundraising campaign from the private sector.
Any discussions, questions?
Well, I'll second that motion. I think, and I'm not sure. I understand what Mr. Negretti's saying. We have a community services advisory committee.
Right.
This seems kind of like the appropriate venue for them to have discussions at. There's not enough meat here tonight for this council to make a decision on doing anything. There's no cost associated with it. There's not a location determined. And Doug, as you indicated, a lot of this stuff was done back in 2007, 2008. I don't see any problem with us looking into it. I like the idea of getting some of our private sector partners, like the Burtex of the world, involved in helping us fund something like this, because the fact of the matter is we know parks do not make money for this city. Our golf course doesn't make any money for this city, so much so that we've had to outsource that. So the idea that we would make money off of a facility like this is not even open for consideration. If we're building this, we're not making money. Sure, people are going to come in and they're going to spend money, but if you think that actually would pay for a park that's an acre in size, there's just no way. But that's not necessarily the point. The point of having parks isn't because we're going to make money off them. It's an amenity that you provide to your citizens. So I'm in favor of exploring it further. Obviously, this information that's been provided needs to be updated, needs to be reviewed by whether it's a subcommittee of the Community Services Advisory Committee that we have, or its own separate, is not so much my concern, but it obviously needs to be looked at a much deeper level.
I might, I would like to see some more information on the cost. What is our subsidy to the parks now? About $8 million?
Well, the parks were incorporated into the city. It's no longer a separate district.
Subsidy because they couldn't afford to. We couldn't afford to close the parks, and we can't afford to keep them open. But it's a huge amount of money that far exceeds the amount of money that we receive. I don't know what we can provide. I don't know what the cost is. I'd like to see some information. I'm just kind of startled, Mr. Firmage, that people will travel miles to go to one, and you have one built in your city, and you want one in Victorville. I don't even understand that. So it must be Alpha Valley's a failure. Right. Okay. Well, staff, I think you're going to have a lot of work to figure out. Where would it go? What would it cost? What would be where does the money come from? If you want to really pack the chambers, talk about not spending money on our streets and roads. That's afraid to go out at night in the dark because people are so angry about that. And we have priorities. Where would the money come from? Nobody knows at this time. We have to do the study.
At this point in time, we would need to study and come back to the council with options if that's the direction.
Well, I think Mr. Negretti raising the issue was a great point. It's a great study on how do we talk about quality of life for Victorville and make things better if we don't address these things. I think we have to address it, but we need a lot more information. And I hopefully there would be a way to have some kind of public-private partnership. That would be great if it could be done. So,
Well, I think everyone has a different point of view when it comes to quality of life. My quality of life starts with maintaining our roads and not so much because we already have parks, we already have a swimming pool, but I agree, we need to give it more study, and maybe we can get additional information, and nothing is impossible. Maybe it can still happen.
Yeah, when I think skateboarding, I think Apple Valley. I'm going to go to Hesperia and see what they have. I don't skateboard, but but I do. I've been to those parks, and but I'm kind of curious on what they provide, and I'll make it a point when I'm in other cities to look at those too, because we have people who are interested in skateboarding on the streets, skateboarding on the sidewalks. It's something that I think we have to look at. I'll bet you there's far more community interest than what we see here, but this is pretty good turnout, and I think we have to look at it.
The other thing is the liability. I know the schools also, they don't provide the liability for the children. The parents have to have insurance when they participate in sports. So I don't know if this would fall under that, where the parents have to be responsible and show proof that they have the coverage, or that they make themselves responsible.
Only if it's a staff facility. If we staff the facility to where it's managed, essentially, then we would assume some liability as a result of that staffing. If the council makes a determination that we can't afford to staff the facility, which I don't know what the purpose of the staff member would be, but if you were to make the determination at some point in the future that you do want a skate park and you don't want it to be staffed because we can't afford that ongoing cost, we adopt rules that are then posted at the facility. Then that liability would fall to the person using it or their adult parent.
Well, I'm curious. If it's open and free, why would we staff it?
Well, we wouldn't. And the staff recommendation would be to not staff it.
Okay.
It's one of the oddities about that state law is that essentially if you do staff it, then you assume some level of liability just because you've staffed it and you are effectively managing it. If you determine that you can't afford ongoing staffing and it's essentially open, free, sign posted, then you are essentially released from that liability.
Madam Mayor.
Any other comments?
Yes,
Oh,
one
go
last
ahead.
thing. I really can't emphasize enough the fundraising part of it, working with the private sector to determine funding streams, and then the solution and the location may not necessarily be, in what we've been considered in the past, whether it's a city property or whatnot, or maybe it's a in-kind consideration situation or a consolidated amenity, something that we can work towards collectively with the private sector and move forward. So that would be my desire, is that the city we look into it further, but we also start to engage the private community, the private sector, and because basically it's going to take both. I'm not proposing just a city's only solution here.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any other reports from management?
I think Mr. Negrete made a motion. I think I heard a second, so we should take a vote on that motion. I believe it was to look at it further and set up a committee. Is that correct?
Very good.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed. Motion carries unanimously.
Now I go into public comments. And I do have some cards. I have Ruben Lucero, and then second, Mike Rothschild. So I'll start with those two.
We might want to remind the speakers at this point, where it's not an agendized item, they're limited to 3 minutes each to speak on these items.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Ruben Lucero. I represent a small group of men and women who are in the service of assisting the homeless community. And we're there to see a transition in them, to get them back into society. And I know that's a big task, but we have been successful in doing that with a few individuals, and for us, that's a positive. Like people everywhere, they've got their own set of problems. And we're just there to let these forgotten ones know that there are people out there that still care for them. And we try to encourage them that there is still hope for them. Some of the services that we offer is we feed and clothe them, and we offer spiritual help to them also. Some people say that we are enabling them to do what they do and to keep them in that position, but that's not a time to really discuss that, but I'm totally against that thought. It is my understanding from reading newspapers and talking to friends and others that the homeless that reside at the park, at the riverbed, are going to be ousted. And that's ousted from a place that they only know as home. One gentleman said that, "I'm not homeless, that is my home." It is also my understanding that the homeless will be provided with temporary housing that through government vouchers. And I don't know a whole lot about that. The paper was not clear as far as all the details of that. But I know it's going to be for an unspecified time, which I'd like more clarification on that if I could. The homeless situation is a worldwide problem, and it's not going to go away anytime soon. My concerns for future meetings, what becomes of these people when there are no longer vouchers available for them? We can't expect for this to be a permanent thing, and I know that's not the case. Is the council prepared to address new issues that are going to be coming up with the homeless if they end up living in town, and some of the problems that might arise? A hungry person will go through certain extremes to fill his belly. And my final point, I'm thankful that the council opens in prayer. Therefore, regardless of what society might think of these homeless community, we know they're not. We know that they don't have the best hygiene that there is, but nonetheless, regardless, they are still human beings, and they are created in the image of their Creator. Thank you for your time.
Mike?
Mayor Garcia, first of all, congratulations on your appointment to the mayor's seat. I'm
Thank
sure
you.
you'll enjoy that. My 2 years I've been off the council, I've joined the Old Town Museum Board and been involved down there. Also, I've participated a bit on there when they've had people coming into the museum and just simply being a volunteer down there. We've got quite an extensive list of that. I want to thank you first as a city for all the things that you do on the Old Town area down there. Certainly the land acquisitions and gathering of that is an important component of that. The Theater of Arts down there, the Fire Station Museum, military statue, Route 66 Museum that I participate in, and a number of people. The Riverwalk program's ongoing, but very important component. And by the way, if you do get involved in this skateboarding, maybe that might be an area to look at for that. And the transportation, all of those are important components of Old Town. What I'm here to ask you to do is add one more thing to your list, and it will cost you relatively nothing. Just simply recognize a very unique historical thing that Victorville is, and that is that they're on the Route 66. We kind of take that for granted. We're sitting here and we don't think too much about it, and I did too, sitting up there a lot of times. I know Route 66. I know it's a great historical thing. I know Victorville has, and recognized so, one of the most important museums on the entire stretch from Santa Monica to Chicago. But it would be nice if we could continue to remind people as they're looking for places to build and grow and develop that Route 66 is a historical component of this country. It doesn't sound like much until I remember the time my wife and I went to China with the chamber, and for all the things I saw at China, which fabulous view, the one thing I wanted to see was the Great Wall of China, which we had on our agenda there. And then for me looking here back, that was the identifying element of China that I wanted to see. You know, I've worked in that museum month after month since I've joined them. Our international visitors average a minimum, a few as 200 to as many as 600 international visitors per month visit our museum down there. This last, I have all the statistics here, plus all of the other visitors outside of that. Almost to a person, they come in here looking at Route 66 as the historical backbone of the city, of the country of the United States. When they come here to visit, and they're thinking, I want to see something that is the United States. I want to see something classic American, the Old West, as it were. And Route 66 is there. And so many of them start in Santa Monica, continue on through Victorville and on through that. So all I'm asking you to do is to recognize it, not take it for granted, but recognize it as an important element of our outreach. Put it on some of the brochures, our annual promotion of the business community out there at the fairgrounds. Have it mentioned as that historical component of the city. We're only 300 years. China, Asia, thousands of years of history. Europe, thousands of years of history. Here, this little country, the United States, 300 years old, and about 100 years of that is Route 66. And people, those folks that are coming here to visit, that's what's in their mind. Route 66, and incidentally, Victorville is a major juncture of that. So I simply ask one thing of you from the board and both groups of the museum. Mention it a bit more. Don't take it for granted. Help us market it out there, and it'll help us grow. We're going to stay in the Old Town area. We enjoy it thoroughly, and we need support from the community. And so that's all I ask of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I have Marilyn Rattan. Oh, thank you. V. McLean. I don't know if I pronounced your name right.
But officially, I was dubbed V in the Air Force, so I took it.
You have 3 minutes.
Thank you. I'll be quick. I'll read it. That way I'll be sure to get finished quick, fast, and in a hurry, okay? To the Honorable Mayor Garcia and to the council members, good evening. I'm here to introduce myself, the work that I've been assigned to do, which is new to your area, with the intent to be in concert with your efforts to effectively handle the disenfranchised situation. I am Verity McLean. I am called to be a missionary, and I have been assigned to the task of incorporating a nonprofit corporation named Greater Aspirations Academic Excellence Growth Program, which was certified nonprofit in 2007 as a visionary, faith-based, and very comprehensive health and human services program, designed to create a movement of people which believe in and support the premise of productive, purposeful lives by providing services of assessments to the disenfranchised and at-risk or the broken individuals to determine their needs, do need-specific counseling, mentoring by modeling appropriate or acceptable life behaviors, in-demand, livable wage life skills training, so there will be no need not to hire these candidates in the job vacancies which are being made available throughout this county and across the nation. We follow up with morals training, self and social awareness, employment preparedness skills, successful interview techniques, follow-up after hiring, and peer training to reinforce and transfer learned skills to others. Therefore, throughout this nation and this county, this city, there will be less of social ills, because the social media and employment styles is far-reaching. We believe that this will not only impact the city of Victorville, but the county as well as the entire nation. Greater Aspirations is aware of the misguided notion that some parents have and boldly state that the schools are to raise their children. Therein we see the failure of the home to properly nurture, teach, and train the child. This gives knowledge about the troubled, uneducated, and unprepared individuals and families which embody the components of being at risk and homeless. Such traits as helplessness, hopelessness, unemployment, becoming victimized by drug and substance usage to dull the pain of failure, and criminal activity which excels throughout just for survival. This is where the increased dangers come to your homes, your businesses, through crimes against persons, burglaries, and etc., when the life needs of people are not met. They strike out.
I'm sorry, you have 10 seconds.
Okay, let me hurry to the end then, of course. What we want to do is just work with you guys to make sure that we are in concert with you. We have been introduced to the HOPE team, and we just wanted you to know that we are here, and we are a faith-based program, and we would love the opportunity to work with you in any effort that you have. Thank you so very much for your time and your consideration.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, now we will be moving on to reports from City Manager.
Just one report. I was honored to represent the city yesterday at the MLK Day Peace March, and also the unveiling of the city's Memorial Park. The city didn't do a big unveiling ceremony, hadn't planned to do it. We wanted it in place for the end of the Peace March, but because we don't have any honorees at this point in time, there wasn't a whole lot to unveil other than the bronze plaque, which looks great. Contrary to what you may have read, I would say that of the roughly 400 people or so that were there, the response was overwhelmingly positive, gratitude, thankfulness. In fact, to me, the most meaningful comment that was made to me actually by Evelyn Glasper, who is the secretary for the NAACP chapter and also is on the Adelanto Elementary School District Board, was that when first proposed as renaming the interchange and then changed to the Memorial Park, which will honor as many as 20 or 30 or more people, and when you add in the educational component, her comment to me was that in her opinion, Dr. King actually would prefer the Memorial Park because he was not interested in individual accolades and individual recognition for anything that he did. But the inclusive park, she believed that he would have a preference of over the naming of the interchange anyway. So just wanted to comment to the council. I know that the newspaper was able to, or got a couple of quotes that perhaps were negative, but overwhelmingly people stuck around for probably close to an hour to have their picture taken in front of the plaque that's there now.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Doug, that's really an important point. I'm glad she made that point. Martin Luther, no matter what J. Edgar Hoover said about him, Martin Luther King he wasn't trying to create a cult of personality. He wasn't trying to bring the attention on himself. He had a mission, and that mission was a 3-century movement. And there were many who came before and many who came after, and I think they all deserve honoring. The question I wanted to raise, I get one comment. When are we going to do our strategic planning update? Do we have a schedule for that?
We don't have a schedule for it, no. In my annual meetings with the council members, that's one of the topics for discussion, is to bring that up and figure out the best timing for that. We're looking at sometime this spring, sometime in the next couple of months to revisit the strategic plan, update it as necessary, review it as necessary.
Understanding that we have problems with technology from time to time in this city, it seems like it's more often than not. Could we get a backup clock for the timing of the 3 minutes so that we have something else that goes off and not depend upon our little screens here for the 3 minutes? I just think, I know down at Sandbag and at Skag, they have an actual timer that sends off lights and beeps and all that type of stuff. It's impossible for the mayor pro tem, or any of us members of the council to keep track of 3 minutes, let alone someone that's speaking to us at the dais, right, Mike? So just for the purposes of being able to move the meeting along. And quite frankly, I don't know, Jim, should we go back to the old way of just making a motion verbally, seconding it, and just all voting aye or nay or abstain? I don't know why we use the computer since it doesn't seem to work.
It didn't work tonight. It's worked pretty good in the past, but obviously we're going to hear from staff or someone on what happened. But
well, it certainly is more memorable when it doesn't work, but I can assure you it works more often than not. And there is a lot of convenience on the back end providing the information more quickly to the
I
public.
just noticed Bill Webb left once the computer stopped working, so I wanted to note that he's not in the audience.
It's so noted. I will discuss that with him in the morning.
Do we have any reports from council members? Or we already?
I just want to make a comment that I know people fill out a card, come before the council, and they speak. They have questions, and they get frustrated because for some reason there's still not a good understanding that the state legislature demanded that we set a time aside for people to speak, but we can't engage in a conversation because it's not on the agenda. And if we engage in a conversation and begin to ask questions, it isn't on the agenda, and now we're not having a clear form of democratic government because we're having exchange of information with one group of people that the general public didn't know anything about. We effectively are prevented from having that discussion when individuals are not on the agenda because the agenda gets published in the paper, the public is aware of the items, they show up and discuss it, and when someone shows up and fills out a card, the public is unaware they're going to speak, and we are prohibited from entering into a dialogue. It's embarrassing for us, but that's the law. We could enter the dialogue, but so then we would be accused of not having an open government and only discussing items when the public doesn't know about it. So we're in a catch-22, and when people raise questions, many, many times staff will notify those individuals. They use the card, they call them up, and we may have a dialogue at a later time. They are not ignored, but it's just we're in a predicament to follow the law. We don't have an agendized item. We don't have a public discussion on it. I hope people understand that. It's frustrating for us, too.
Other questions or? Okay, the next item was an adjournment of meeting. We had a meeting adjourned to 6 p.m. on Tuesday, January 27th, 2015, for the purpose of discussing the classification and compensation study and other employee benefits. However, we will not adjourn at this time. This item will be scheduled for future discussion. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I don't have anything else before the council, so this meeting is adjourned.
Scheduled later down. Not doing it next Tuesday, right? Correct.
We are
Correct. Not doing it next Tuesday.
So we're not going to have it on this date? I didn't know that.
No, she's just going to tell me.
Oh, I already have it all set on my calendar. I'm going to be here.